I never thought my biggest business dream would become my worst nightmare. Starting Frontier Brewing Company was everything I had worked for, a chance to turn my passion for craft beer into my livelihood. When Jackson Mercer entered my life with his industry connections and charming confidence, it felt like the final piece falling into place. Our grand opening exceeded all expectations, and for a few glorious months we were the talk of the town. But something in his eyes never quite matched his smile. Before I continue, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe to find out how I discovered my business partner was secretly plotting to steal everything I had built. Brewing beer had been my escape for years. After graduating with an engineering degree, I landed a corporate job that looked great on paper but left me feeling hollow. The technical aspects challenged me initially, but the office politics and meaningless projects slowly crushed my spirit. Weekends became my sanctuary, experimenting with hops, malts, and yeast in my garage, perfecting recipes that friends soon begged me to make for their parties. My little homebrew setup grew as my passion deepened. I installed specialized equipment, tracked fermentation temperatures meticulously, and studied brewing techniques obsessively. The corporate world felt increasingly distant as my dream of opening my own brewery took shape. I started entering local competitions, collecting medals and validation that my beer stood out from the crowd. The Midwest Craft Brewers Festival changed everything. I had set up a modest booth showcasing my 3 best creations when a well-dressed man in his 40s approached, sampling each with thoughtful consideration. While others gave quick compliments, Jackson Mercer asked specific questions about my fermentation process and flavor profiles. His knowledge impressed me, and his enthusiasm seemed genuine. "This hazy IPA has something special," he said, examining the glass with expert precision. "The tropical notes come through without overwhelming the balance. You have serious talent." After the festival closed for the evening, we continued talking over dinner. Jackson revealed he had helped launch 3 successful breweries across the country and was looking for his next project. His industry knowledge was encyclopedic, and his connections seemed endless. He spoke of distributors, equipment suppliers, and marketing strategies with casual familiarity. "What you need is a business partner who understands the industry," Jackson said confidently. "Someone who can handle the business side while you focus on what you do best, creating exceptional beer." His proposal came 2 weeks later, a 50-50 partnership. He would provide startup capital and business expertise, while I would be the brewing mastermind. We would be equals co-owners of something special. I hesitated initially. Giving up half of my dream felt significant, but the alternative was years more of saving while working a job I hated. My friends were enthusiastic about the opportunity, calling it fate, and too good to pass up. Only my father expressed reservation. "Just make sure everything is in writing," he cautioned. "Know exactly what you are signing." I assured him we would have proper contracts, but in my excitement I rushed through the paperwork Jackson provided, eager to start building. Finding our location took weeks of searching. Jackson insisted on downtown visibility, even though it meant higher rent. When we finally found an old warehouse with exposed brick walls and high ceilings, we both knew it was perfect. Signing that lease felt monumental, the first tangible step toward making Frontier Brewing Company real. The renovation transformed the space completely. Industrial brewing tanks gleamed against the rustic brick walls. A long mahogany bar welcomed visitors to the tap room. Large windows allowed passers-by to watch the brewing process. Each element reflected our complementary strengths. My technical expertise created an efficient brewing layout, while Jackson's eye for design gave the space its inviting character. When our custom-built brewing system arrived, I felt like a child on Christmas morning. Each tank and fermenter represented possibilities. Recipes I had refined for years would finally reach a wider audience. The equipment installation took 3 intensive weeks with me, overseeing every connection and calibration. Our test batches exceeded expectations. The larger system required some recipe adjustments, but the essence of what made my beer special remained intact. When local food bloggers caught wind of our pre-opening tastings, they generated buzz that ensured our grand opening would draw crowds. Opening night was everything I had imagined. The line stretched around the block before we unlocked the doors. Jackson worked the room masterfully, charming everyone, while I proudly explained our brewing philosophy. Seeing strangers enjoy something I created filled me with purpose I had never experienced in my corporate career. The first 3 months were exhausting but exhilarating. We sold out of certain beers faster than we could brew them. Local restaurants began requesting our products for their taps. A regional magazine featured us in their Next Big Thing section. Jackson handled the business growth while I maintained quality control and developed seasonal offerings. It was around the 6-month mark when small inconsistencies began appearing. Suppliers mentioned payment delays I knew nothing about. Jackson started holding meetings with people he never introduced. When I asked about financial reports, he would promise to share them later, only to provide vague summaries rather than detailed numbers. "The finances are complicated right now with our expansion plans," he would say dismissively. "Just focus on the brewing. That is what you do best." The first real warning came from Thomas, owner of another brewery across town. After a local beer festival, where Frontier had won 2 categories, he approached me with an expression of concern rather than the congratulations I expected. "Just watch yourself with Jackson," he said quietly. "Ask around about his time at Riverstone Brewing." When I pressed for details, Thomas shook his head. "Not my place to say more. Just do your homework." That night, I searched online for information about Jackson and Riverstone, finding only that he had been briefly associated with the company before it changed ownership. The lack of information felt deliberate, as though someone had carefully managed what appeared online. 2 weeks later, I overheard Jackson on the phone mentioning meetings with potential investors. We had never discussed bringing in additional partners, and when confronted, his charm turned defensive. "You are being paranoid," he said with a dismissive laugh. "These are distribution contacts, not investors. You need to trust me to handle my side of things. You are great with beer, but terrible with people. That is why our partnership works." His words stung because they contained a kernel of truth. I was more comfortable with brewing formulas than networking. Still, the incident left me uneasy, especially when I later found business cards from 3 different investment firms in the office trash. Around this time, Jackson hired Amanda Dalton as our taproom manager without consulting me. Though initially frustrated by the unilateral decision, I found Amanda efficient and honest. Her previous hospitality experience elevated our customer service, and staff responded well to her leadership. One evening as we closed, Amanda hesitated before leaving. "Octavio, I am not sure if I should say this," she began cautiously, "but Jackson acts differently when you are not around. He tells vendors and visitors he is the primary owner and calls you our brewer rather than his partner." The comment kept me awake that night. The next morning, I arrived early to search our office for anything that might confirm my growing suspicions. Hidden in a rarely used filing cabinet, I discovered paperwork for 3 previous businesses Jackson had been involved with, all now defunct. Each showed a similar pattern: Jackson partnering with someone with technical expertise, followed by business dissolution within 2 years. Mysterious calls from suppliers I had never worked with began coming to the brewery, each demanding payment for orders Jackson had apparently placed without my knowledge. When confronted, Jackson claimed they were necessary expenses that he had forgotten to mention. The final piece fell into place when Aaron, one of our most loyal customers, pulled me aside during a tasting event. "I thought it was weird," he said uncomfortably. "Jackson was telling everyone yesterday that he has been fixing your recipes because they were initially unbalanced. Said something about you being technically skilled but lacking artistic vision for brewing." The betrayal of that statement cut deep. My recipes had won competitions and customer loyalty. They were the heart of our business, the culmination of years of passion and experimentation. My growing paranoia made sleep nearly impossible. I began documenting everything, keeping copies of all paperwork, and recording conversations when legally permissible. Meanwhile, Jackson systematically limited my access to business accounts, claiming it was streamlining our processes. In meetings, he increasingly positioned me as merely the brewer rather than co-owner. Staff began coming to him first with questions that should have been directed to both of us. Even worse, I discovered subtle changes to my recipes when reviewing production logs, unauthorized adjustments that compromised the distinctive character of our beers. Despite growing customer numbers, Jackson claimed we were facing financial difficulties. He suggested I take a smaller salary temporarily while I noticed no change in his lifestyle. He still drove his luxury car and mentioned weekend trips to his lake house. The isolation grew as Jackson subtly turned staff against me. Octavio is under a lot of pressure, he would say, within earshot. His creative temperament makes business details overwhelming for him. The sympathetic nods from employees who once respected me as a leader were perhaps the most painful part. The truth revealed itself completely on a Tuesday night in November. I was working late perfecting a winter stout recipe when Amanda entered the brewery with an expression of grim determination. "I quit today," she announced, placing a folder on the brewing table, "and you deserve to know why." Inside were documents she had photographed from Jackson's private files, incorporation papers for Frontier Craft Brewing, LLC, a separate company with Jackson as sole owner. The address listed was a property just 3 blocks from our current location. The formation date was just 2 months after our original partnership began. "He has been planning this from the beginning," Amanda explained. "He told me today I could either come work for his new venture or find another job. When I asked about you, he laughed and said you would not be part of the picture." My hands trembled as I reviewed additional documents showing trademark applications for our logo and distinctive beer names, all filed solely in Jackson's name. Most devastating were copies of my original recipes registered as trade secrets under his separate LLC, with no mention of my contribution. Sleep evaded me entirely that night. By morning, I had reviewed every document of our partnership, finding the devastating clause I had overlooked in my initial excitement. A non-compete agreement that would prevent me from opening another brewery within 100 miles. For 5 years, if our partnership dissolved. When I confronted Jackson in his office the next day, the charming mask dropped completely. His smile vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "You are a talented brewer, Octavio, but a terrible businessman," he stated flatly. "I knew that from the moment we met. Your passion makes you valuable, but your naivety makes you exploitable." He outlined his plan with disturbing frankness. He would claim financial mismanagement on my part, force a dissolution of our partnership, and launch his new brewery with my recipes, our staff, and most of our customers, who already associated the brand more with him than me. "Fight this, and I will tie you up in legal battles until your savings evaporate," he threatened. "The contracts you so eagerly signed give me everything I need. Walk away now with $20,000 or get nothing later." My protests about the illegality of his actions were met with laughter. "Proving fraud requires evidence and money for lawyers. You have neither." That afternoon I arrived to find my keycard deactivated. Through the windows I watched staff continuing work as normal now, under Jackson's exclusive leadership. My desperate calls went straight to voicemail. Former employees avoided eye contact when I encountered them in town. The under new management sign appeared a week later. Jackson had accelerated his timeline, telling everyone I had experienced a breakdown and sold my stake voluntarily. His version of events spread quickly through our small brewing community, with many accepting his story without question. My savings dwindled as I consulted lawyers, each confirming the difficult reality fighting would be expensive, lengthy, and uncertain. Meanwhile, I discovered Jackson had applied for several business loans using information from our partnership, leaving me potentially liable for debts I never approved. My apartment became a prison of despair. Brewing equipment gathered dust as I lost the will to create. The craft I had loved now reminded me only of betrayal. Friends grew tired of my single-topic conversations, drifting away as my bitterness deepened. Rock bottom arrived the night I saw a newspaper feature celebrating Jackson's visionary leadership at the newly rebranded Frontier Craft Brewing. The article praised his innovative recipes, my recipes, and his entrepreneurial journey, without a single mention of my existence. That night, staring at my reflection, I finally confronted the hardest truth. Wallowing in victimhood was allowing Jackson to win completely. Something within me hardened into resolve. If legal channels offered limited hope, I would need to find another way to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The turning point began with a search for patterns. If Jackson had done this before, there would be others like me. Through industry forums and persistent networking, I connected with Paolo, a former chef who had partnered with Jackson on a restaurant venture 3 years earlier, only to find himself similarly ousted. He uses the same playbook every time, Paolo confirmed during our first meeting. Finds talented creators, builds their trust, then pushes them out once he has what he needs. Further investigation uncovered Martin, a third victim from Jackson's earliest venture. Together we formed an unlikely alliance, united by shared experience. Each of us contributed pieces to the puzzle of Jackson's fraudulent history, revealing a pattern spanning nearly 8 years. Meanwhile, I received an unexpected message from Derek, a brewery assistant who remained at Frontier, but was growing uncomfortable with Jackson's increasingly erratic management. He is cutting corners on ingredients, rushing fermentation times, Derek reported during clandestine meetings. Quality is suffering, but he is pushing production higher to maximize short-term profits. Derek became my eyes inside the operation, documenting questionable practices and gathering evidence of Jackson altering my original recipes while still marketing them as authentic. Most importantly, he copied financial records, showing how Jackson had been siphoning company funds into his personal accounts for months before my ouster. With mounting evidence, I consulted Catherine Walsh, an attorney specializing in business fraud. Unlike previous lawyers who saw only the challenging contract language, Catherine recognized the pattern of intentional deception. Contract terms obtained through fraudulent means are potentially voidable, she explained. We need to establish that Jackson entered the partnership with premeditated intent to defraud you. These documents from his previous victims help substantially. While Catherine prepared our legal strategy, I methodically documented every aspect of Jackson's scheme: the separate LLC formation, the trademark theft, the financial misrepresentations, and the pattern across multiple victims. A breakthrough came when we located 2 original investors who had been told they were investing in Jackson's sole proprietorship rather than our partnership. Their signed affidavits confirmed Jackson had deliberately misrepresented our business structure to funnel investments into accounts I never knew existed. The final trap was set at the Regional Brewing Industry Conference. Through careful maneuvering, Paolo arranged for Jackson to meet with what Jackson believed was a potential investor. In reality, the meeting was with an investigator equipped with recording devices. Jackson's boastful nature proved his undoing, as he proudly detailed his business model of finding talented creators, extracting their knowledge and recipes, then discarding them. The confrontation happened at Frontier Craft Brewing during peak business hours. With Catherine beside me, police officers standing by, and local business reporters present by anonymous invitation, I entered the tap room Jackson had stolen from me. His face registered shock, then anger, then calculation as he assessed the situation. "Octavio," he said loudly, adopting his charming persona for the audience of customers. "So good to see you. Are you feeling better?" "Much better," I replied, maintaining steady eye contact. So much better that I brought some interesting reading material. Catherine presented Jackson with our evidence portfolio, including witness statements, financial documentation, and the damning recorded confession. As color drained from his face, I reclaimed my brewery before stunned onlookers and staff. The legal proceedings that followed were complex but decisive. Jackson's systematic fraud justified emergency injunctions that returned operational control to me pending final court decisions. The non-compete clause was invalidated due to fraudulent inducement. Most employees returned when they learned the truth, with Derek promoted to assistant manager for his loyalty. Rebuilding required more than reclaiming physical assets. I instituted transparent business practices, creating open book management that shared financial details with all stakeholders. New partnership agreements with 2 silent investors included extensive protective clauses and independent oversight. Rebranding from Frontier to Authentic Brewing Company symbolized both a fresh start and a commitment to integrity. Our tagline, "Truth in Every Pour," became more than marketing. It represented our core philosophy. The brewing community rallied around my comeback story. Fellow brewery owners offered guest taps to reintroduce my beers to the market. Local media covered the fraud case, helping restore my reputation. Even suppliers extended favorable terms to help us regain stability. The first batch brewed after reclaiming the brewery was special. An imperial stout aged on oak spirals soaked in bourbon named Redemption. Watching those first pints being poured for customers who had returned felt like coming home after a long exile. 1 year later, Authentic Brewing stands stronger than ever. The betrayal that nearly destroyed me ultimately forced me to become not just a better brewer, but a more complete business owner. I now understand every aspect of our operation, from ingredient sourcing to distribution logistics. The taproom has become a community gathering place where I share my story openly with aspiring entrepreneurs. Once monthly, we host startup nights, where new business owners can seek advice and connections. My painful experience now serves as a roadmap of pitfalls for others to avoid. The most unexpected outcome has been my relationship with Paulo and Martin Jackson's previous victims. Together, we formed an informal support network for creators navigating business partnerships. Our collective experience now helps others spot warning signs of predatory partners before signing away their dreams. Our brewery has won 3 regional awards this year, not just for beer quality, but for business ethics and community impact. The transparent approach has attracted talented staff who share our values, creating a workplace culture built on mutual respect rather than hierarchy. I still brew several times weekly, keeping my hands connected to the craft I love. The difference now is that I do so from a position of security and confidence rather than vulnerability. My recipes remain mine, properly protected through legitimate legal channels. Jackson eventually pled guilty to multiple fraud charges. I take no pleasure in his downfall, understanding that justice and revenge are different concepts. My focus remains firmly on building something meaningful rather than dwelling on past injuries. The hard-earned wisdom from this experience comes down to this: trust must be balanced with verification. Dreams require protection through proper documentation and oversight. And perhaps most importantly, the best response to betrayal is not bitter withdrawal but resilient reinvention. Looking across our busy taproom tonight, watching strangers connect over creations born from my passion, I feel profound gratitude for the journey, even its painful chapters. The brewery I fought to reclaim has become something far more valuable than what I originally envisioned, a testament to the power of perseverance and the possibility of rebuilding with greater wisdom after betrayal. What business lessons have you learned the hard way? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else avoid similar pitfalls. If this journey of resilience inspired you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Share with any entrepreneurs in your life who might need this reminder that even when everything seems lost, the right knowledge and determination can turn the tables. Thanks for joining me today, and remember, in business and in life, authenticity always reveals itself in time.